Hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I am so grateful for the opportunity to connect with more people because connection is at the core of our needs as humans. Connection really is everything. So I'm just going to take a moment to say thank you for being here and honour the ancestors and traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I stand and work, which is the land of the Kaurna people. I'm Catherine, birth keeper or doula turned threshold walker, space holder, sacred business guide, and fierce reconnection and rewilding advocate. I don't usually like the term advocate and prefer to use the term guide. But in this instance, I believe that we are talking about a matter of urgency. So I really need to be prepared to shout this from the rooftops in the space of advocacy. I'm here to talk to you today about the urgent call of our earth is making to us to wake our wild, to remember who we are at a spirit level and begin our necessary rewilding process. Why we all need to make a rewilding journey, or begin at least a rewilding journey, to focus our common vision to create a better world and a world that we're all proud to pass on. I believe that to be human is to be spirit in physical form. We are both spirit and earth embodied, but we have forgotten what that means and how to remember who we are at our core. Many are being catapulted into situations that are forcing them to remember, and many are sharing about the blessings that return when they remember what this earthly experience really is asking of them and all of us. But it can be really challenging and uncomfortable in many varied ways. No growth happens without darkness. Growth and gestation always begin in the darkness, moving forward and pushing through to find the light. This process of remembering, reclaiming, rebirthing, and reconnecting with self, with spirit, with one another, and with the earth is something that I and many others are referring to as rewilding. Rewilding is something being thrown around much more commonly these days, which is great, but many still don't entirely know what that actually means and whether they too could unlock their own rewilding journey. It's also such a personal and individual process, so everything I speak about and the idea of rewilding absolutely means and looks like something different for every person. The definition of rewilding, sort of the original definition, is to return to a more wild and natural state. It's the process of undoing domestication. I don't know about you, but for me, reading that for the first time was a massive remembering. It was originally used as an agricultural term to restore an area of land to its natural uncultivated state, used especially with reference to the reintroducing of species of wild animals that had been driven away or exterminated. So it's sort of this process of decolonization and remembering our own roots and our own cause before we were told who we should be or what it should all look like. But how fitting is this when it comes to humanity? We've forgotten what it means to be in symbiotic relationship with our earth and with the creatures around us. We've been made to believe that we are separate from nature, that on one hand we're completely superior to nature, but on the other hand we're not enough as we are. That we need fixing in some way or lots of ways, generally through products or commodities or medications. Rewilding is about remembering that we are one with the earth and her cycles, that we too are wild, that we are free, and we are fully and completely whole as we are. That everything we need is already within us. We need nothing external to complete us because we are already whole. I believe that rewilding is the ultimate peaceful rebellion. It is the gentle revolution that we are all yearning for and that the earth needs now. Not just the earth in terms of her land and the animals, but also in terms of our humanity. Rewilding allows us to see our own sovereign power and reject the notion that we need to be dependent on a system that continues to make us feel unworthy and not enough. Once we connect with our wild, it is impossible to go back. You cannot reverse this remembering. It's the ultimate awakening, but it is also our birthright. When we rewild ourselves, we are also able to more deeply connect with and rewild the earth. So for me, rewilding is more about supporting others. In particular, I work with women and those who identify as such to reconnect with their own natural wisdom and unlearning all of the shame and dependency and disconnection and domestication. It is about remembering our own innate power, beginning with our inner and outer cycles, and removing shame and fear of our shadows. To remember who you are, you need to forget who they told you to be. As Clarissa Pinkola Estes writes in her book, we need to connect with our inner wild and find those wolves to run with once again. Otherwise, we will never live to our fullest potential or vibrancy. Perhaps why so many people are struggling so much, particularly with mental health issues and isolation and feeling lost and disconnected. Jane Hardwick Collins says, "We are the women the earth needs now." But if you're sitting there thinking that rewilding sounds terrifying because you're a luxury 5-star hotel kind of person, that the outdoors freaks you out, that you don't think that your insert label, crunchy, hippie, alternative, whatever, not enough in some way, I want to tell you right now that there's absolutely no one right way to rewild. This path is not linear. Rewilding yourself and your life is a unique and as individual as your fingerprint. And it is a lifelong journey of unlearning, of reprogramming all of the rubbish that's been sold to you, which looks completely and utterly different to every single person. It's about healing, evolving and changing as you go along and peeling away the layers. And as you peel away the layers, something else will arise for you to honor and acknowledge. And then you'll peel away that and then the next one will come forth. Rewilding does not have an aesthetic either. It might look on Instagram like naked nature dancing and medicine drumming, but that's not the definition of rewilding, and that's not what's going on inside. It might look one way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what people are doing inside, and it could be happening on the inside and not looking anything like that on the outside. It starts from within, as within, so without. If we heal inside here, we can heal together, we can heal the earth. But we can't do anything unless it starts from within us, and that has to start wherever you are, wherever you're at right now. And wherever you're at right now is exactly where it needs to begin. Nowhere further, nowhere less. You are enough. Wherever you are in your journey is enough. Rewilding starts from within, and it begins by you deciding that you want to listen to the call of your soul, asking you to question things in your life. It might look suddenly like you're wanting to change careers, even start your own business. It might look like wanting to look at an alternative advice for your health or your diet. It might look like you wanting to take a workshop or something completely out of the ordinary for you. It might be something really traumatic that happened for you or something that changed the direction of your life. It might feel like a sudden and intense awakening, or it might feel like a slow and quiet drumbeat that gets louder and louder over time. or it might not. It might look completely different. This is your journey. Rewilding is a shame-free and self-judgment-free space. Even though those self-judgments will creep in and shame will creep in, because that's how we've been programmed, they're just wanting to be acknowledged. Ultimately, the aim of rewilding is to rid this planet of shame, so that anything that brings you shame, like feeling that you're not doing it well enough, will defeat this process or set you back potentially. But it might be just about also bringing through those blocks so that you can heal them and you can work through them and acknowledge them so that you can get to the next stage. You absolutely do not have to feel like you need to be out camping in the forest, foraging for your own food, completely disregarding all of society, unless you want to and that's your thing. Because there's no one right way. Just because rewilding originally started off through agriculture and we talk about rewilding because we are connected to the earth, doesn't mean that you have to feel at that point yet. You may later down the track. But rewilding has to be your own process, and there's no one way of doing this, and we all need to do our own process of rewilding and peeling away those layers so that we can get to the point where we all honor the earth as our mother and as our connection, that we all need to work symbiotically together, that we can't live without one another. It's such a colonizer view to think that we need to live separately. We need one another. The earth needs us, we need her. And similarly with the animals and the plants and everything. And so it's about getting to that place. But if you're not there yet, or you never get there, that's okay. It's your process. So I was just going to share a little bit about my own journey and my own rewilding process. This may or may not resonate with your own journey, but I do believe that story is medicine, and vulnerability, sharing our vulnerability, is what connects us together. And our stories really are our medicine. So my own rewilding journey has been huge, but also not a very specific awakening like others talk about. I have always innately believed that honouring nature and honouring our rites of passage, and in not just swallowing whatever anyone in a supposed position of power told me to do. I've always been a bit of a rebel and a truth seeker, just innately. I was certainly a witch in a past life, I'm sure, or many lives over, and brought that with me as well, brought the witch wound and the sisterhood wound with me. I questioned my family, the private schools I went to, and any doctors who told me I needed something. As a teenager, I did get quite lost and depressed. It was really isolating, especially questioning everything. But I knew that there had to be more to life than this. I went down the path of university and professional careers as a social worker and some midwifery, which I loved, but I was really so frustrated at these people just moving through the motions and trying to help others when the foundations were not in place. So we just became like a band-aid, particularly with midwifery. It was nothing to what I knew in my body or my past memories that it should be like, or that it was like at some point, or what I was yearning for, that what I was experiencing didn't match up, didn't make any sense. I was so frustrated that by the time women and families were showing up at the altar of birth, everyone was so focused on birth, but it just felt a little too late. We had missed so many vital steps before they were even pregnant to help them prepare, and then we just left them to fend for themselves as vulnerable newborn mothers, basically abandoned and undervalued by society, left with a momentous role of raising the next generation, which is the most important thing one can do, while no one is supporting them, valuing or holding space for them in their own intense rebirth. I just couldn't get comfortable working in this birth space and focusing solely on the event of birth, as if it's some event that we should be manipulating and playing a part in, because we need to fix. When I had my babies, that's when things really opened up and everything changed. I could no longer just stand back and be okay with how this world was functioning. I was experiencing that rebirth and that matrescence myself, and embodying that for the first time, not just from the outside. Women were coming to the birth altar already so brainwashed that they couldn't do it, that they were not enough. I could see how much money was being made off of fear and shame and from disconnecting women and birthing people from their own power. They were just being given band-aids to numb out and continue the cycle. I felt really, really broken after my births, even after all of the experiences and work that I had done in birth myself. So it was in this process of putting myself back together that the rewilding really began to take off, and to start removing or bringing out a lot of that shame. I shed myself of everything that was no longer serving me, and I had to move through a huge grieving process that was immensely uncomfortable and challenging and really unexpected, but which was necessary for my rebirth to where I am now. The grief was so unexpected, and yet I felt like it was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. This was the beginning of the reclaiming of my sovereign path. I'm passionate about holding space for that liminal space before the rebirth or during the rebirth. It has been quite a process in really getting to the heart of what I've been called to do, while also diving deep into my own shadow work and unraveling a lot of my own cultural programming and unconscious beliefs, because that's where the power is. That's where the work needs to be done. There is always more to rewild because this culture is so pervasive. But I know that I cannot go deeper with my clients than I have gone myself. So I've gone deep myself, and I continue to go deep. It's an ongoing process. As within, so without. Everything I do and offer is a sacred extension of myself and my own inner world. I found incredible teachers like Jane Hardwick Collins and remembered all of the wisdom of my cycles and of her story. And while I have always been very connected to my body and my intuition, I've been able to continue to go deeper on this path. Walking along the thresholds of birth with women and birthing people was my first real understanding of what we are missing in this world. And then walking through the portal myself cemented the work that I needed to be doing. I realized though that we have to go back. We have to go a step further back and start at menstruation, or as early as possible. This is why I developed cycle charting resources and a planner, which became the foundation of all of my teaching and coaching. I began as a social worker, but moved into birth work and then into sacred work, such as rites of passage and ceremonies and blessings, and teaching about the cycles and offering sacred business coaching, because not all businesses are actually sacred, or they don't believe that they're sacred. And sacred work is really, really unique, coming from the heart. And a lot of sacred work, a lot of people who are in service to this sacred work find it really difficult to actually create those masculine foundations and masculine ways of getting the message out there. And so they have this incredible flow of work and are in beautiful service, but it starts to get diluted without the what I kind of talk about as like the banks of the river that sort of hold it in, and the containers that hold it in. So that's why I started doing more coaching and business work, sacred business work. Teaching is my greatest privilege, and watching others rewild themselves and help others doing the same is what I love the most. But I want to answer that question, how did we forget and how do we remember? Because that's what it's really about. What do we do next? And how can I help you to get either beginning that journey or to support you on that current journey? So to move forward and change in the present and future, we actually must look back and learn from the past. Gabor Mate says, the past informs the present and predicts the future because the past lives in our cellular memory. So we often try not to look to the past, forget the past and just move forward. Just focus on looking forward and what you want rather than looking back at the pain. But we actually really need to look to the past to help inform us of the future and to help us not repeat the same mistakes that have already been made, and to learn from our ancestors and learn from the earth and learn from whatever has already been put in place. So we really have forgotten, mostly since the rise of the patriarchy. That was the beginning, and I really encourage everyone, if you haven't heard of her story, there's a few people who have written about her story and sort of our history from a feminine perspective. Jane Hardwick Collins has her version of her story on her website. I think it's a downloadable. I really encourage you to read it. I have a sort of small summary in my Circle Medicine guide. It's such an important remembering, and a lot of people don't know that history or her story. There is far more money to be made by us holding fear, as well as being completely blind to our own innate wisdom. Essentially, the things we have been told to fear or to hide away in the shadows as taboo are in fact the areas of this human experience that hold the most power. The most sacred, most powerful, most transforming parts of us are in the shadows. Where there are shadows, there is great power that we are not privy to knowing, or we are ignoring, or it's being kept from us. So for example, menarche, our first bleed, and then ongoing menstruation, and then birth and aging and menopause and death. If you think about all of those things, and sex as well, all of those things are seen as taboo, are seen as we should be hiding them, as disgraceful, as shameful. If you think about our blood and how that's depicted, hide it away, don't talk about it, make it blue in advertising. Before the rise of the patriarchy, when we lived in the goddess times, these were the exact same moments in human life that were seen as our most powerful, most mysterious, most sacred. They are the greatest mysteries of our existence. But they are a mystery. They cannot be completely understood. They cannot be completely controlled, and they are in the hands of the women who experience them. So they became shamed in order to be controlled. We were feared into believing that despite menarche always being known as the most powerful moment in a woman's life, heightened magic and psychic abilities, that actually we were dirty and should be hidden away and covered up and, take a pill so then we can not experience it because it's too painful or too inconvenient. Similarly with birth, which was always known as the transformation from maiden to mother, as a woman left her body to retrieve the soul of her baby, and yet now women are completely in fear of birth. They want to numb it out because they're told that they're in no way strong enough or wide enough or small enough or whole enough to birth their baby the way that we have always done. Isolation birthing is the perfect example. We have become so disconnected from our bodies and our abilities and the power of these rites of passage that when we're finally given permission to reclaim our wild power, that we are so afraid and we beg to be taken back. So like during COVID, during isolation, where it's really difficult to access hospitals, there's a mass crisis of fear and I can't do this on my own. Women were finally told to birth without so much unnecessary intervention. There is still a need for some intervention, and all women need to birth how they feel safe. But there was so much anger and fear that it caused massive chaos. Women and birthing people don't even know that 85+% possess the ability to birth unassisted and undisturbed. And this is terrifying, because if you don't know, if you don't have the knowledge, like, knowledge is power. If you don't know that, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what to fight for, and that you are completely able, and that you don't need somebody else. Aging and death are the same. They are hidden away. Women who do not, and all people who don't embody the maiden 24/7, are shamed and told to hide it away, or to get fillers and get all of this cosmetic stuff to, continue to embody a maiden phase that is no longer in existence, because we're not able to accept the other phases, the more yin phases of our cycle, of our life journey. We're expected to deny our most human cyclic powers. Everything on this planet is cyclic. Seasons, plants, the moon, the sun, animals. And we are animals. We are animals. We birth, we bud, we blossom, we full bloom, we harvest, we decay, and then we die and are reborn. Everything on this planet goes through that exact same cycle. Birth, bud, blossom, full bloom, harvest, decay, death, rebirth. And if you get stuck in only one phase or one half of the cycle, if you think about plants, they can't, like roses or flowers, they can't be in full bloom all year round. They actually have to go through that process of harvest and decay and death and rebirth in order to gestate and come round again. Similarly with all of our food. They blossom, and then we harvest them, and we utilize them, and they nourish us, and then everything goes dormant and into rest and gestation and darkness. It's a necessary part of the process. We can't be in summer all year round. Some places in the world are, but they talk a lot about the impact that can have on humans, being in summer all year round or winter all year round. Everything on this planet is connected and interwoven. We've forgotten and taken ourselves out of the equation, leading to some pretty drastic and horrific consequences. Internalized shame has caused the death of our sovereignty and our ability to fully embody how more than enough we actually are. We're not supposed to live our lives completely in the maiden phase. We're meant to move into mother, marga, and crone to fully embody our wholest potential and power. As we age, we're able to reclaim and internalize our power more and more, yet we're expected to internalize our shame and hide away. A big reason why so many women and bleeding people have such a challenging and difficult perimenopause period, because that is the phase when everything comes to the surface to be witnessed and to start telling those truths and making those actions. That's the harvest time. That's the urgency time where you're harvesting all of the gifts of the rest of the cycle and making changes before you go into full darkness and slow down. That's the busy time. And if there's a lot that has been suppressed and pushed down and hidden under the carpet, and if you haven't had your cycle almost your whole life, then physical things and emotional things and mental things and ancestral things are all going to come out. That's the wild woman phase. And they say that in menarche, a woman or a bleeding person meets her power. In the mother phase, they practice their power. This is an ancient proverb. And in menopause, or sort of later in age, they become their power. So that's what we're working towards. That's the goal. And if that's the intention and that's the goal, everything is going to be showing up to help us get to that point. And often it shows up in discomfort and in messages that we need to action something or change something. And that can be uncomfortable. And if we don't want to face the discomfort, or the pain. And discomfort is very different to suffering. suffering is, something we need to act on, but pain is and discomfort is something that we need to embrace and honor for whatever it's asking us to do. So don't even get me started on all of the hormones pumped into women to start, regulate, shift their cycles that are our greatest messengers for what need to be illuminated and healed. The damaging effects are going beyond just one generation and adding to this continued forgotten wisdom. Not to mention they take billions of dollars, they make billions of dollars, and then create a cycle of dependency, which then makes even more money. And so you're taking one thing and then you need to take the next thing to help the other thing, and so much dependency and money. The fifth vital sign, which is the menstrual cycle, is a brilliant resource to understand this better. Women are not given a choice to fully understand informed consent. We're not taught about this stuff. We're not taught, even people going through IVF are not taught about how to understand their cycle, which is the key to their whole fertility journey. But it's about taking money and power, not about actually giving the power and the wisdom back. Our lack of knowledge around our own birthright and our own wisdom has become a massive human rights issue, but that's another story again. We're shamed for any negative emotions, shamed for being hysterical, emotional, moody, shamed for resting. The glorification of busy disables us from connecting with a vital half of our cycle and with the earth as well. Because while the earth is resting, we're trying to keep busy. And we are animals, we're wild creatures, we are deeply, deeply connected at a cellular level with what's going on with the earth. And we're trying to maintain summer energy all year round when the earth is tired and resting and dormant, and we're just pulling resources out of the earth that really they're just wanting to be resting. We are told to fear our emotions and our power. Thus, we generally choose to suppress it because it's all too hard, it's all too much. So we hide our grief away and we numb it out. And numbing is a whole other business. We hide anger because it isn't ladylike, and we numb it out. Numbing, on the other hand, ensures huge amounts of dollars for our capitalist fathers. But death and grief and anger and sorrow are vital parts of our existence and of our cyclic nature. They're incredibly linked to the feminine, they're incredibly linked to yin, and we need yin and yang to create a whole. We can't just be focusing on one half, and we're deeply imbalanced because we're focusing so much on one half, and not one half is more important than the other. We need equal balance. We need equal honoring. If we're not doing that for ourselves, we're not doing that for the earth. We're depleting ourselves. We are cyclic beings, and we are not physiologically the same person from one week to the next. Hysteria is not some mental illness. It is the time in a woman or a person's cycle when they decide that they have had enough, and they'll stop taking shit from everyone so that they can release what isn't serving them, and they can move to the next phase released, having changed something, having altered something, having spoken their truth. But we're moving through cycles without releasing, and we're carrying massive baggage with us. If we haven't utilized the releasing part of the cycle, we're carrying it into the next one, and then into the next one, and then into the next one, and then it's if it's being carried into the shadows is getting heavy, and it's going to explode out somewhere. When we don't listen to the messages in our cycles, eventually they will force us to, and it will not be pretty, generally. It's all connected. We must rewild and actively seek to live by our own flow in order to break the cycle. So I want to offer some hope, I suppose, that we can change things and we can do things ourselves to support a better world that we want to live in and connect together to create a world that we're proud of, and to create a world that is more supportive of our wild state of being and of our necessary symbiotic connection with with ourselves, with our spirit in physical form, with one another, because that's so important. So many people are feeling isolated and disconnected from each other in this very modern, busy sort of social media world, and with the earth as well. So some simple ways for you to tap into your own divine wisdom and feminine power starting today are these. So first and foremost, start slowly. Go slowly. Be gentle on yourself. There's no, as I said, one right way. There's no perfect way. There's no linear way. Our earth is messy and raw, and you know that saying, no mud, no lotus. It's about embracing and acknowledging and honoring the messy parts, the dark parts, the angry parts, the parts that have been put into the shadows. So anywhere that you feel that there has been shame, any parts that you feel there has been judgment, they'll be in your shadows. And it's about going slowly, trusting the process and allowing whatever needs to arise, to be still, to give yourself permission to rest. We need to remove the glorification of busy and embrace what our body is asking of us. To connect to yin, we really need to connect to yin. This might also include a need to lean into and listen with empathy and stillness to any discomfort and shame that's arising. What grief still lays within you? What parts of you still feel a lot of shame? When you feel triggered, what arises within you? We know our teachers are speaking based on what arises within us. So what is arising in you? It's usually more about, it's always a message for you and what you need to do, as opposed to do with anyone else or any other person. What is arising in you, particularly in the areas of shame? We must find the place within us that's okay to be with what is. Anchor this path with regular check-ins with the moon and with cycle charting. I believe that cycle charting is the greatest anchoring key to unlock an individualized rewilding process. It is well before self-care. So we know about self-care. We talk about self-care a lot. Cycle charting is not self-care. It comes well before self-care. It allows for self-awareness first and foremost, and reconnects you to yourself and to your needs without any external pressure or input. It reminds us of our wild primal selves that lay underneath all of the hustle and conditioning. When we look beneath the conditioning and external pressure, we often find our cycles screaming at us to listen, often very unwell cycles that have been trying to communicate with us for maybe decades. Our menstrual cycles are the fifth vital sign, and they're the barometer of our well-being. As Alexandra Pope says, the barometer of our well-being. They are the compass and the GPS of our life. Everything in your life should revolve around them and not the other way around. The moon also tells us a lot about our collective energy. It tells us about what's going on the outside, but our cycles tell us a lot about our internal energy and our internal needs and what our body is asking, what our body, physical body, but also on unconscious level, on a cellular level. We're only active and open for half of the time. The other half is for reflection and rest, just like the earth does, just like the moon does. Honor grief, big feelings, anger and sorrow. What are they asking of you? How are they calling you to listen to them? What arises when you question how to honor them and release them? Honor rites of passage. Whatever happens at these times sets the theme for the rest of that phase and thereafter, whether we acknowledge them or not. So how are you honoring liminal spaces, particularly around our rites of passage, or what happened to you at your rites of passage, and how did that set the theme for the rest of your phase and thereafter? Go back and reconnect to those rites of passage for yourself. Reclaim those for yourself through ceremony, through ritual, through reconnecting with others, through understanding the stories of your lineage, your red thread, your maternal line. If your rites of passage were traumatic, you can begin a process of healing them for yourself and for your children, so that you're not passing those down. You're not passing the trauma and the shame down to the next generation, because they do. If it's not healed here, it will continue just as it has before you. And the more trauma through that thread, the more you're sort of carrying on a cellular level yourself. For me, it's about being held while on my own journey, which never ends. Our journeys they just continue cycling around, because you cannot hold space for others unless someone is holding space for you. And while knowing I am held and supported, I can hold space for others, mostly in the form of rewilding birth from the fringes. That's my passion. Through my experiences in birth, and realizing that turning up to support the altar of birth felt very too little too late. So I really believe peace on earth does begin with birth, because everything on this earthly plane begins with birth. But I believe that birth is disturbed well before pregnancy. And if we're going to rewild and heal birth, we must look at ways to support birth in other creative ways well before pregnancy, and long after the event of birth, and connecting all of those rites of passage together. Because if menarche was traumatic or undervalued, or something happened there, that's going to carry over. And similarly along the red thread line. So there's other work, so much other work to be done to support birth. Very much outside of birth. I call myself a fringe dweller for that reason. So if you are a space holder, I hope someone is holding space for you. If you're a mother or a parent, you are doing the greatest work on this planet, despite what the patriarchy make us think about the worth of that role. You are worthy, and we need your service on this planet now more than ever. All of you watching and listening, you are whole and you are enough, no matter what anyone else says. Nature holds all of the answers. No one and nothing else. Thank you so much for having me. If you would like to connect with me, you can find me at www.catherineeden.com. I'm very much on Instagram. My handle is CatherineEden_rewilding. You can find some free charting resources, tools, and information on my website that you can download. We also have a online circle membership. I like to call it our Sacred Coven. For the wild women, for the wild woman within. It's an online circle to dance among sisters with Grandmother Moon, rewilding, remembering, and reclaiming our wise woman wisdom, to unlock the knowledge that is the foundation of our lives, the information that is all of our birthrights. The time is now. You can join that. It's only $33 a month at the moment, and all of our tools, so it's myself and my colleague Erin Black, we run that. We have live circles each month to hold space for this rewilding process. That really is the point of it, to open up a space where we can hold each other on our own journeys, and you have access to our entire energy mastery toolkit, which has everything in it to reclaim your menarche and honor rites of passage and move through discomfort and move through big feelings and learn about your menstrual cycle and use it as a way to master your energy. And I also have a blessing and circle facilitation training course for anyone looking to support the honouring of these rites of passage and work on the fringes to support the world and our healing, and to reconnect with one another, to reconnect with circle medicine, to reconnect with our spirit in human form, and, you know, have that common vision to create a better world. That's really what it's all about, to create a better world through rewilding and through reconnection in any possible way, reconnecting with self, reconnecting with one another, and reconnecting with the earth. I believe that is the most important work that we can do, but it begins inside first, as within, so without. It was so lovely speaking to you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye.